Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 609-919-9200. We are 1 day away from the NFL Draft. We will be broadcasting in Philadelphia tomorrow at the NFL Draft, and we're very excited for it. We all know the story about Ryan Leaf. Went to Washington State, was drafted number 2 in the 1998 NFL Draft after Peyton Manning, and then it didn't pan out for him in the NFL, and then he had some addiction problems, and he's recovering right now, and he's been sober for 5 years. But we want to hear his story. We want to hear his advice that he has to people that are going through a tough time. So we welcome in Ryan Leaf right now to the Zach Gelb Show. Ryan, we appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
I'm doing well, good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we appreciate it. And that's 5 years that you're sober now, right?
Yeah, April 1st, it was 5. It seems like a lifetime ago, but yeah, really proud of that. Proud of really just every single day because, I couldn't go 1 day without taking pills. And so to get through 24 hours is an accomplishment in itself.
Well, congratulations. And you were taking Vicodin. Just take me back. When did you become addicted to it? When was the first time you took it? Take me a little bit about your history with Vicodin.
Well, I was introduced to it in college because of orthopedic surgeries, and it did its job. It took away the physical pain, but I never really registered to use it or abuse it after that was over, and it continued, as a professional with orthopedic surgeries. But when my career was over, I needed something to fill that void, I guess, or not feel the disappointment, the failure, the depression that came with that transition from football to, what everybody else does on a daily basis. You'd think you'd be able to do that, but I couldn't cope or I couldn't live on life's terms, so I started abusing it. And probably for about 8 years, off and on with a couple stints of sobriety in there, I was a daily user of an opiate painkiller.
I had a friend that unfortunately passed away from addiction, and the one thing that still amazes me to this day is the way, and he was using heroin, and I had no clue, and you just wake up one day and your friend's no longer there. But the way that he was able to deceive people, it was just unbelievable because I knew this kid very well. He was one of my good friends, and I just never knew what he was doing when I wasn't with him. Can you just talk a little bit more about the deception aspect and what you did to try to get Vicodin and just try to tell people that you didn't have a problem?
Well, yeah, the thing about being an addict is you are a master manipulator and deceiver. You will tell anybody anything to get that fix because of this obsession. My biggest thing was I would pretend to go to open houses back in my hometown, pretend I was interested in buying the house, and they give you free reign of it, and I would rustle through their medicine cabinets, and 9 times out of 10 I'd find some sort of opiate painkiller that I would then steal, and no one knew about it. That ultimately wasn't the reason why I got arrested even. So that was probably the main deceptive way of trying to do things. And then the denial part, if you are found out and those who love you confront you, your continuation of to deny it and blame others, that can go back as far as I can remember, even before the drug was ever present in my life.
And it's emotional on your family because they love you and they always will love you. But eventually the family needs to give the addict tough love. When was that moment that your family gave you tough love and started distancing themselves from you a little bit? Did that happen?
Yeah, I figured out a way to bond out. And I had kind of promised the bondsman that my family would get the money to him for the bail bond, and my parents came to me. I was sitting at the house, and they said, "We're not going to pay for this bond, and we need to take you back to prison." So the idea that your parents standing in front of you felt safer if you were inside a cell than in their house because of what you were capable of doing or what you could do is a very humbling piece, and that was that was the moment where they stopped enabling my behavior and set a boundary, and they were willing to support me in any way, shape, or form when it came to my recovery, but they were not going to enable the behavior that I had essentially held them ransom for so long.
You know, with you, people always say what could have been. Just with your mentality, and clearly the drug had a great, powerful, take on your body. But did you feel invincible? Did you feel like that you would always be a stud, and then when it didn't happen, you just didn't know how to deal with it?
I think so. I think when you're 21 years old and everybody's telling you how great you are and you're about to be paid millions of dollars and you're going to be the second pick in the draft, and they say that you're equivalent to Peyton Manning, which is, pretty head in the clouds type of stuff, you think you're invincible. And I can tell you right now, I had the opportunity this year to mentor the prospective quarterback and wide receiver prospects at the scouting combine in Indianapolis. And I remember when I was in that place, and I told a lot of them a bit of my story, and I thought back to, if I was sitting here listening to this guy, 40 years old, tell me this story, would I listen? I think I have it all going on, and I'm not going to be that guy at 35 where I'm sitting in a jail cell because I couldn't go a day without trying to find some pills. It would be tough for me at that point to actually listen to the person and go, I need to listen to this. So it's important for me just to continue to tell it and then stay out of the result. If it affects one person, then it was worth it.
Ryan Leaf with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. When did you know that your career in the National Football League would not be a long one?
It probably could have been a very long one. It could have been similar to Rick Myers, where I would have bounced from team to team maybe and been a backup. My pride just wouldn't let me be a backup when I was in Seattle. I got there. I got under a great coach in Mike Holmgren, and, I was going to be the backup to Matt Hasselbeck. And, I didn't want to go back to camp. My pride wouldn't let me be a backup and not the starter. So, I effectively ended my own career by just simply walking away and quitting. And that's silly because you could have got paid for a living to play football. And, I just wasn't the right person or had the right, brain makeup to be able to do that.
I know eventually you have to move on, and that's part of your rehab process right now. But how many times, how many hours during a day do you think about still now what could have been with your career?
0 hours. It's right now it's all about me moving forward because the way I think, my best thinking took me to prison. So I utilize others. My days are pretty routine. I'm up at 6. I'm in the gym at 7. I'm in the office for most of the day. Some days I get out on the golf course. I go to meetings. I mentor guys. I spend time with my fiance. We're expecting a child in October. So, I have a lot of things that are much, much more important than the way I look at it, a silly game. An important one because it brings people together. But in the long range of things, it's minuscule in what I need to do over the next 40 to 50 years of my life.
I think it's great, though, that now you're working, with the NFL draft, doing some media work, and you're also working to mentor some of these kids, before leading up to the draft process. But for you, is that difficult? Like when Thursday night hits, is that going to be difficult to be in Philadelphia and do some of this draft work just because knowing your history and how much of a toll this really took on your life?
I don't believe so. The draft itself was magical for me. It was where I achieved a goal and a dream that I wanted to do my whole life, and my family was there. So the draft process itself, it's what kind of came afterwards and when the season starts and things like that. But, I work a lot with my therapist, and I have for years. And we found an affirmation that seems to fit best, and that's what other people think of me is none of my business. And so I say that every day in the mirror, and it's taken time. It's taken a long time because I took things very personally, and what people had to say or what they thought about me was important. And now it just isn't. I kind of take myself out of the equation. I do my part. I do what I can control, and I enjoy talking about sports. I've done it my whole life with my dad, growing up on the breakfast table in the morning. So it's just natural to then discuss it. And my hope is, we do a lot of this work, and there's a documentary coming out in May that ESPN did, and my hope is that after that, I'm less of the story, and I can actually be part of something where I'm telling the stories, because I feel like I'm in that place.
When was the last time, by the way, that you last watched an NFL draft? Was it last year, or was it longer than that?
I don't know if I've watched an NFL draft since mine, and it'll be the same tomorrow. I'll be on a flight actually back to Los Angeles around 8:30, so I might catch the very beginning. I always check the next day, of course, to see how things went and where somebody went, because I do follow the NFL and I do follow sports, and I want to see where some of the guys went, and I'm always looking for Washington State guys to be drafted as well. So, but watching it, not so much. Don't spend so much time watching the drafts, actually.
So you won't be at the draft tomorrow, but what kind of work are you doing then for the draft? I know you're doing broadcast work, but tell me a little bit more about that.
So we'll be doing some work with ESPN. The big one we're going to be doing is Outside the Lines with Bob Lee, and we're going to be doing some analysis on the incoming draft, the quarterbacks, as well as promoting the E60 piece that's going to air in May for me. And then afterwards, they have some other shows live from the draft that we'll be doing. And then hopefully maybe do some other things and see some people. And I think it'll be cathartic as well. And then hop on the plane and head back west.
Ryan Leaf with us, wrapping up with the former NFL quarterback right now on the Zach Gelb Show. In prison, I'm sure there was, a time where eventually you changed, and it seems like you are a changed man right now, but every day is a battle for you. Every hour, every minute is a battle. When was that moment in prison that you started to see your life really turn around and move into a positive direction?
Well, it took a while. I didn't change much early on. I spent 32 months there, and probably 26 months in, my roommates, really got on me about my attitude and behavior. And he was a former Iraqi and Afghan war vet, and he just simply said that I had my head buried in the sand and I didn't understand the value I had, not only to the men in there, but to the people when I got out, because he said, "You're going to get out at some point, Ryan." So he said, "Let's go down. You're going to come down with me to the library, and you're going to help me teach guys who don't know how to read. And it was the first time I'd ever been of service to anybody but myself, I think, in a self-serving way. And I didn't know it at the time, but it stuck a foundation in the ground. And, I started to keep coming back. And before you knew it, when I walked out those doors, I knew that the foundation of my life was going to have to be based in service. Otherwise, I was just going to be the same person and continue to mess up and make poor choices and either end up back in prison or end up dead.
Let me ask you this. Did you get drugs in prison? Could you get the Vicodin in prison?
You could have. If you wanted to, you could have. For whatever reason, I simply didn't. I think there was a few times where I tried and guys, swindled me or conned me into taking something that wasn't drugs. So they could, but I wasn't in a place where I probably would have said no. But after a while, that chemical leaves your brain and it's easier and easier. And these days, I don't think about the substance anymore. I think about the behaviors that exist. The substance was just a byproduct or a symptom to what the underlying problem was, which was my behavior, my choices, the narcissism, those things. And I have to continuously work on that. But luckily, I've surrounded myself with people who I trust and I believe care for me unconditionally, and they hold me accountable. They when I'm messing up or they see something that I just can't see, they let me know, and I either make amends or I correct it, and I move forward. So that's the biggest change.
I always wondered this, and maybe it's because I'm naive because I've never been to prison before, but how do the drugs get into prison?
Every other way. It's just another society. Prison in this country is just another society. It's just where people go. The same kind of things people learn how to be con men, people learn how to do. It just doesn't matter. and the guards are similar in kind. That's a big reason why drugs get inside prisons. But I mean, that's the way it goes. Nothing changes unless you make a change. It has to be a 180-degree lifestyle change. Even when you're in there, you have to start acting different, and that's difficult when you're in a society like that, because that's what it is.
Ryan, let's just say if someone's listening right now in the car and they're going through a dark time like you once were, what would you say to them? What would you say to that person that needs help right now and that is basically asking for help but can't do it themselves?
Yeah, being vulnerable is the strongest thing you can do, especially in I know men in this country, you feel like you can't tell somebody, but if somebody's out there and they're struggling, reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly on Twitter at Ryan B. Leaf, direct message or anything, or reach out to us at transcendrc.com. We have specialists waiting there on the phone that can help guide you. You don't have to commit to anything, just actually calling somebody else and telling them that you're sick or that you have a problem is a rarely freeing act. You can do it anonymously. Just take action. That's the biggest thing I can say is there has to be action behind it. No one can do this for you. You have to be willing and know there's people like me and the people at Transcend that will support that.
How many people do maybe direct message you on Twitter and ask for help? How many people have you interacted?
It's amazing. It really is. It's immeasurable. I can't tell you. Today alone, with the Players Tribune article, the Dan Patrick Show, and probably with your show here after I get off, there are anywhere from 15 to 100 messages, either with some kind of congratulatory or actual asking for help. And I direct them or I talk to them myself and try to be of service in any way I can. It's amazing how the interaction can come from just speaking out and being honest with people. And it really is important, really important to me.
And like I told you, I had a friend who was battling an addiction, and unfortunately he lost his life. And we do an event every year on his birthday, and we have speakers come each and every year. And just to hear the stories, and I think that's important. If someone's listening out there, they hear your story or they hear someone else's story, just to be able to hear that you could turn your life around, I do think it's very important in trying to heal these people, Ryan.
It is. And when I got out of prison and I went and got treatment and I was starting this new life, especially with my family, I felt like if I can just stay out of the public eye, stay under the radar and live my life. And then I had a few mentors who live a very public, sober life, and they just told me, and I trust these men, and they said, if you do something for the right reason and you're simply just telling your story, not telling anybody what to do or anything like that, but just telling your story, giving something that somebody can relate to and maybe find a light, that's your purpose. That's what you have to do. That's part of our program. And I listened to them, and that's what I started doing.
Hey, Ryan, before we let you run, and we really do appreciate the time today, let's just talk a little bit about football. Coming up with this draft, you got time to talk to these quarterbacks. I don't love any of these quarterbacks early. I think it's a developmental process right now. Like the Jets at 6, I wouldn't take a quarterback at 6 right now with the Jets. But what are your thoughts on these quarterbacks that could go in the first round?
I have a similar thought. I've been using this stat this week with the idea of, in the last 14 years, there's been 8 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. 4 of those 8 have won 10 of those Super Bowls. Now, that's what it takes to be a franchise quarterback in my mind. Are any of those quarterbacks this year in that category? And I don't see it. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I just don't see that right now. So are you willing to jeopardize a first-round draft pick on that? And it looks like, some general managers are such in fear of missing out on one that there could be a possibility of 4 of these guys going in the first round, and it may be a reach. And those things can set back an organization a long time. Me personally being the case in San Diego, that organization still may have not recovered completely. And it's important that they get it right and build their teams other ways if they need to. But I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow because that's the entertaining part about the draft. People will reach for a quarterback because you need a franchise one to win a championship.
No question. Last one with Ryan Leaf, who's kind enough to join us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. you've been through a lot, and we're very happy that you're in a good place right now, and you're going to continue to keep on fighting this day by day and continue to grow your family. But how do you describe Ryan Leaf? If someone comes up to you and they say, Ryan, we never met you before, we never heard about you before, how do you describe what you've been through in your life so far?
Well, I don't want to minimize this at all, but the stuff I went through, I think they were just rough patches I had to get through. I think that every human being struggles. Mine were just very public, but it's no better or worse than anybody else's. Life isn't fair. It's how we deal with it that matters. And I think human beings, we're all flawed, and we're just trying to be better every day. So that's the way I kind of say it. I say, hey, I'm Ryan. I'm a flawed human being trying to be better, and that's the way we go forward. And I think it served me well.
Well, Ryan, we're wishing the best of luck to you, and we thank you so much for hopping on board with us today. And let's do it again real soon. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks so much. There's Ryan Leaf joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Okay, we see some people are waiting on hold for the contest. You could call in right now. We will screen you during the break. It's 609-919-9200. That is the number to get on board with us to try to win some tickets to the NFL Draft. Just patiently wait on hold. We will get to you during the break. We got tickets for Friday. But before we do that and take the break, just incredible stuff from Ryan Leaf. And you hear the power of addiction, and you know that addiction does impact everyone, and there's been countless number of stories where people have been affected by this terrible disease. And if you're listening out there and you need help, don't be afraid to call someone that can help you out, and we hope that you get that help and really do turn your life around. So 609-919-9200, Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 4:36. You want to go to the NFL Draft, call in right now. Get on in. We will screen your phone calls during the break. I see some people are calling in and hanging up. If you hear the hold stuff and you hear me talking, that means we will screen you during the break. So call in right now. We'll do the contest coming up next on the Zach Gelb Show.